Hello Coach here, welcome to this video. In this video I want to talk to you about freeing yourself from the past, about freeing yourself from your life story and eventually creating a new life story. So before I start, I just want to explain quickly what is a life story. So we pretty much, all of us, we have a life story. So this is something that we tell ourselves over and over again, and sometimes, most of the time, it's starting during the childhood. And like, for example, we explain some things like, oh, I have anxiety because my parents have anxiety and I've grown up like that. Or, I don't have a high education level because my parents did not have any. And so that's pretty much their fault. That's the reason. So I'm going to tell you what was my life story and how it was actually a big disadvantage and how I changed it. So to do that, I used a technique from Tony Robbins, which is called blaming effectively. So I will explain you how it works and how you can implement that for yourself. So my life story is that, when I was young, my parents and the rest of my family, I have two brothers. So my parents, my two brothers and I, we would move to a new city every approximately 3 years. So during my entire childhood, pretty much until I was 20, we moved every 3 years. So every 3 years I would leave my school, all of my friends, everything that I knew, And as a child, it was very, I would say, traumatizing, even if, my parents don't really say it this way. But for me it was, because today I don't really have any real friends that I have for like 20 years. I don't have a place where I can go back and feel like, yeah, this is where I grew up, this is where I have all of my all of my past, all of my growth. I don't have that. And for the longest time, I was really blaming my parents because of it, because it was at some point when I was, I think, 15, it became very difficult for me to connect with other people, just to make new friends, or just to, make new friends, let's say that. And it was very difficult because every time I was feeling like, but there's no point for me to form a new friendship with this person, because I know I'm going to move again in 1, 2, or 3 years. And so I'm just going to lose this person again, and I'm just going to be disappointed again. And it really started when I was 15, because we moved again. I was in high school, and I left behind me all of my friends. I had a very strong group of friends and my boyfriend at the time. And it has been really extremely difficult for me, and I kind of had a depression after that during high school, and I was just closing myself. I just couldn't talk to anybody. I just wouldn't go to anybody to meet new people, and it was very difficult for me, because at that time, we were starting to be on Facebook and these kind of things, and I was seeing all of my friends continuing to have party and to do stuff all together, but without me. And the first few times it was really crazy difficult for me, and I would just stay in my room and cry for hours sometimes. And so because of that, I kind of had a depression for a few years, and I couldn't open to anybody, and I really blamed my parents for it. I was like, I don't have any friends, and that's their fault. It's because of the way I grew up, and because of losing everybody, of this cycle, everybody losing every 3 years. It was just too difficult. And then, when I was like, I think 25 years old, we kind of, the perspective changed, because then I was an adult, and then I could see the things differently, because I would try to see the things from their point of view. And they always told me that we were moving every 3 years for my dad's job, and he always told me, well, that's simple, because if we wouldn't have moved, we wouldn't have the lifestyle that we have today, and we would never have been able to pay for your business school. And yeah, I studied in a business school, and obviously they are very expensive. And my parents always told me that it's because we moved and because we had this lifestyle that we were able to pay all of these things. And you know, as a when I was 20 or things like that, around this age, it was very difficult for me to see their point and to admit, because I felt just so broken, and because I didn't have any friends, and I felt so lonely for years. And then when I was around 25, I kind of changed. It's not that I changed my mind, but it's just that I kind of started to see the story from their perspective. And you know, I honestly asked myself, if I would have been in their shoes, would I have done it differently? And the answer is no, because just like my dad, you know, I would have wanted to do the things the best I could for my family, and to provide them, and to be able to pay for long studies. And so if I would have had this opportunity, professional opportunity, to make more money, just on the condition to move to another city, then I would probably have taken it, you know. And it's just very difficult to admit that to yourself. But when you take the parents' point of view, then you actually realize that they've done all of that for your best, and then done all of that because they care about you. And if you were an adult at that time, you would just probably have done the same thing. So that's pretty much the step of how you rewrite your life story. And then another step is that you need to realize also everything that happened to you, what does it actually bring you today? Because I was blaming them for not being able to make any friends, but something that was also part of me is that because I was moving every 3 years, I was pretty much able to adapt to any environment or any situation. And every time we would move, you know, like after a week or maybe 2, I was again feeling at home, you know, no matter what was the house or the environment or the city or whatever, you know. And so when I started after high school to study in business school, I went for internships abroad and in other big cities of the country, and I was very far away from them. And even when I was abroad, you know, I didn't know anybody. And I went to Spain for work, for an internship. I went to Spain for 4 or 5 months. I was 19, and then I moved to San Diego when I was 20, I think, and I lived there for about 5 months. I moved to Philadelphia a few years later, and etc. You know, and everybody was telling me, "But are you sure? Do you know anyone there?" And I was like, "No. What difference does it make?" You know, because for me it was just so normal and so natural. And so because of all these experiences, I was actually very autonomous, very independent, and very strong. And so, you know, I was blaming my parents for all the negative stuff, like me being lonely, not able to make any new friends, but I was not blaming them for the positive sides. And so this is the technique from Tony Robbins. It's called blaming effectively. And blaming effectively is pretty much so in my case, my parents, I was blaming my parents for the negative stuff, but it's also blaming for the positive stuff. And I wasn't blaming them for making me such a strong woman. I wasn't blaming them for making me someone that is capable to adapt to any situation and to be so independent and strong. And, you know, those are the points that are part of me, part of my personality today, but yeah, that I owe to them and because of all these experiences. And so that was my story, my life story, and pretty much how I changed it using the Tony Robbins technique. So now I will quickly explain you how you can do it for yourself, although you probably now realize how you can do it because I pretty much explained the different steps. But yeah, so like I said, the first step is, so first of all, you think about your life story, and then you need to recognize that your life story doesn't necessarily make sense, because if you take the other person point of view, like your parents, for example, point of view, or your teachers, sometimes you will realize that if you were in their shoes, you would have done the exact same thing. Or like sometimes you realize that it actually there's no reason for you to feel the way you feel. Like, for example, just to be more clear, there was a woman at the Tony Robbins event, and she was saying that pretty much her life story is that she was traumatized because when she was young, she was like, I think 5 years old, and she was asking like, daddy, come to see how I play or whatever, and he was like, not now, I don't have time. And that's it, that's not, maybe now you hear this story and you're like, well, that's it, that's nothing. But for a child, it can be very hurtful, and it can be very difficult because you can feel really rejected because of it. And so that's pretty much what happened with this lady. When she was at the Tony Robbins event, she was like 50 or 55 years old, and she still had this traumatized, and Tony Robbins asked her, but okay, let's say that you take the parents' point of view, what do you think now of this story? And then she realized that it actually doesn't make sense at all, and that as an adult she would even probably would have had the same reaction. So that's really the point, like it's taking the other person's point of view and realize that your story doesn't necessarily make sense. So that's the first point. And then the second point is really to realize all of the positive effects of it, because usually you blame the person for the negative impacts, the negative effects, but there are always, in every experience, in every situation, there is a positive side of the things. So now the second step is about realizing what those positive sides are, what positive impact did you have in your life, and ask yourself, if you would do it all over again, if you could have a magic wand and just change the story to the perspective you would have want, would you actually change it? Would you actually make it different, knowing that in today's reality it would make you a different person? And sometimes that's just not what you want, because you are strong because of those experiences. So you just need to be able to embrace your past and to recognize that no matter how traumatizing it has been, it is part of the past and there's nothing you can do about changing it. So just think about the positive impact and think about the other person's point of view, and realize that you would maybe have done the exact same thing. So that was the technique from Tony Robbins, blaming effectively. I hope it was clear, and I hope the video won't be too long. Well, 12 minutes, I think that's okay. Okay. All right, so thank you so much for watching. Before you go, just make sure you're subscribed. If you're subscribed, you will receive a notification when I post a new video, if you hit the bell. And it's a way to keep your life a happy place and learn new techniques about personal development. So yeah, it's definitely something you would want to do. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.